I don't know what it is, if it's a time or if it's just this is how it is on Earth immortality, but
Mm,
it's like we're all constantly fighting all the time. And
mm.
what are these feminists like what they actually saying? Are they trying to overthrow the church and overthrow the priesthood? Or are they saying I have something within me that tells me that I am equal to my brothers, and I can see that that's not reflected in the church.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of All Things in One, Reuniting Religion with the Woman in the Wilderness. And today, to help me go over chapter 15, but really kind of the whole book, because she and I are so much on the same page with the things that we've written, I have here Gwendolyn Wyne. So, hey, Gwendolyn.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Jocelyn.
Oh, I'm so thrilled. You and I could just have conversations for hours. So we're going to try and keep
Yes.
this to about an hour.
Okay.
So,
Wish me luck.
yeah, so Gwendolyn and I officially met in person at the Journal of Mormon Polygamy conference, which was like kind of an interesting way to meet up as women in the church. But Gwendolyn, aside from that, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Happy to. So my background is a member of the church my whole life. I went to BYU and graduated with an English major and a business minor, and then found myself putting those two together in my career as a librarian. So I went to UCLA and got my library degree there, and I worked as a librarian for a few years. And then when my husband and I started having children, I set that aside for a hiatus, and I've been raising children and also writing a lot during that time. And then in the last, let's see, summer 2022 and spring 2022, I published a couple of papers on Square Two. One of them is called the Matriarchal Order and the Ordinances of the Flesh. And then in the summer, it's titled Seeking the Matrimonial Order. And these are two papers that I just feel really strongly communicate, or I tried to communicate our value as women and our equal status to our brothers. And so I'm really excited that we get to talk about that as it relates to what you're doing. I love what you're doing. So the book that you've created is just amazing, and let's jump in.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Well, it's so funny because I didn't actually really read your papers, those two papers, until I was basically finished with the book. And I'm like on
I
chapter
love that.
15, right? I'm writing chapter 15.
Yeah.
It's the last chapter. And I just needed some confirmations, I think, of some things that I was writing. And I just felt prompted to, oh, go look at Gwendolyn's paper that you still haven't read. And so I read both of them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like everything I'm saying. You're saying everything I'm saying. And what I love about that, right, is that you and I came to these things completely independently. Right. It's not like we were jiving
Hmm.
back and forth and like, hey, we should like look at it this way and we should define things this way. It was just this totally came through inspiration, I think, to both of us, right?
For
Um,
sure.
yeah. I mean, I know that there are women who have definitely pioneered in some of these things that we've gleaned things from, but this was just something that I felt inspired to, yeah, right. And you did too, which is so cool. Okay. So I'd like to start off actually. So first of all, in Gwendolyn's paper, Seeking the Matrimonial Order, she talks about the creeds that God says are abominable, which is so funny because I totally talk about that in the same way that it's it's about that the abomination, a lot of that is about how there isn't equality between male and female, that doctrine of really Heavenly Mother and Divine Feminine was taken out. And something that you say is since these truths were restored, Latter-day Saints have wandered 5 times longer than the children of Israel did in Sinai, awaiting our
Mhm.
opportunity to enter the promised land of Zion as we continuously seek to learn and implement the true implications of this revealed doctrine. I don't know if you want, do you want to say anything about
Yeah.
that before I go on to another quote of yours?
Yeah, it when I pondered that, it just really struck me. I was so sad that it's taken us so long. And the revealed doctrine that I think is important for us to embrace, as you were mentioning, is this concept of heavenly parents, that we have a heavenly mother,
Mhm.
and that comes as Joseph Smith taught, and this is true Hebrew, that the word Elohim is a plural. And so when we're speaking about Elohim God, it's not this singular male, this single male bachelor, as Valerie Hudson likes to call him,
Yeah.
this theoretical God.
Hmm.
But it's really our father and our mother united. And so it just breaks my heart to think how long it's taken us to be willing to embrace it. And I really feel like we're there now. I'm ready to embrace this. I have embraced it, and it has really changed the way that I've seen the world and seen myself for the better.
Yeah. And I think sometimes we don't realize, like, sometimes we water down the concept of Zion and that term Zion because we use it generally to kind of mean where the saints landed here in Utah or the church generally as Zion. And that can be true to a certain extent. But in doing that, what we fail to recognize is we don't actually have Zion. And then we don't question why don't we actually have Zion. And so sorry, excuse me, although we're talking about chapter 15, I feel like we could go back to some of my previous chapters and talk about Zenos's olive tree allegory in relation to that, right? And I know you've done extensive research on that. You really influenced actually that your videos, like that whole series really influenced a lot of my thinking on this concept of like the wheat and the tares, right? Someone coming in and sowing these corrupt seeds that create this inequality in the vineyard. And I really
Yeah.
point that out in my book. Like there is numerical inequality and it's smack dab in the middle. And we're going to go off now onto like that instead of what we're chapter 15, but it's smack dab in the middle of this sermon that Jacob gives on polygamy and hoarding of
Yeah.
wealth and like and change. He's doing it in front of the temple. Clearly they're altering eternal doctrines here. And anyway, so I didn't know if we wanted to go there or move back, bring it back to
Well,
15.
I let's go all over. Let's
Yeah,
just
let's
do
do it.
that.
Let's just do
And we're
it.
going to take it as a
Okay.
very feminine discussion. We're going to be like water moving around.
Yeah.
Um, I spoke with Meg Ritmanick of In Her Image recently, and she made this comment about the olive vineyard and the tree that I just was amazed by. And she said, I'm gonna paraphrase her, that the loftiness of the branches could and represent patriarchy taking over. Because when you look at a tree and you look at the symbolism of it, the roots of a tree are connected with the feminine, and then the branches would be the masculine. And so to her, that was just such a clear statement in the Book of Mormon, that and a prophecy, that the problem we have going on is that patriarchy has taken over. And as you were mentioning Zion just now, and the things that people think about, maybe reasons why we don't have Zion. And I used to hear, and I would sort of just shoulder shrug. I don't know why, I guess you're right. I guess we don't have it because we're not willing to live the law of consecration and share our money. And that was kind of and then of course I would hear people say, well, it's because we're not willing to live polygamy. And
Hmm.
all these ideas that were very, very much based in a patriarchal way of viewing things, right?
Hmm.
It's like it's
Hmm.
about money, and it's about women being willing to submit to men. And now, since I honestly have repented of thinking the way of the world, and I've been so grateful to have had God open up more light and knowledge. And so, as I've repented of those worldly ways of thinking, that men should be ruling over women, and that money is really this most important thing, that there's nothing more important than material wealth. And so, if you're willing to live that, then of course you've got Zion. It's like there's way more than that. It's
Hmm.
about being one with women,
Hmm.
right? And one with women includes being one with our hearts, and not having us be like, okay, I'm willing to just martyr myself eternally for you. Like that's not oneness.
Yeah.
So
That's
those are
so
some
true.
thoughts.
That's kind of, yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up because that is kind of the perspective that a lot of women in the church have taken. It's like, okay, we know there's this doctrine out there that we might have to comply with at some point,
Yes.
and by golly, I'm going to sacrifice whatever it takes to bring about this plan. And so
Yeah.
when I've seen people criticize women like you and like me who end up speaking out about this and saying, wait a minute, we might be thinking about this the wrong way, and bringing out some of the scriptural and doctrinal inconsistencies with our views on polygamy.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's funny because the criticism is often, oh, women just don't, like it because it's offensive to them or whatever. It's like, no, like we have dealt with this for well, personally in our own lives, we
Yeah.
have dealt with this for decades. We have
Yeah.
been willing to sacrifice.
Hmm.
We've been willing to do that for so long.
Yes.
And it's the waking up to who God really is and that closer relationship with God that
Hmm.
all of a sudden shifts that and it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's actually not a sacrifice that is
Yeah.
required of me
Yeah.
or of all the
Yeah.
women in the church. And oh, okay. That's great
Yeah.
because I never loved that in the first place. So, oh my gosh. Okay. So, moving on here to another one of your quotes. You're talking about how really the idea of the parable of the lost coin, and how
Mhm.
women can, when we kind of lose this doctrine of femininity, um, that we need to seek for it. And so I'm just going to actually read something from my book, and it says
Mhm.
that unfortunately, so when Joseph Smith, it says that he gave Emma Smith the keys of this priesthood, or as you and I call it, the priestesshood. And
Mhm.
that was in 1842, right? And so in my book, I say that unfortunately, Emma Smith and the women of the church in 1842 did not have long to expound on or explore the keys they had been given, nor did they have the ability to pursue this endeavor after 1844. For in the summer of that year, only 2 years after Joseph Smith restored the priestesshood in conjunction with the priesthood, the prophet was martyred. During a time of much upheaval and contention, the Relief Society was disbanded and was not reinstated with an official presidency until 1880. Despite this eventual reinstatement by the second president of the church, Brigham Young, his daughter Susie Young Gates wrote that the privileges and powers outlined by the prophet in those first meetings of the Relief Society have never been granted to women in full, even yet.
Mhm.
Therefore, as part of the ongoing restoration, it is our privilege in this dispensation of the fullness of times to seek out a fuller, more comprehensive understanding of the role of women and their priestesshood in the plan our Mother and Father in heaven established from before the foundation of the world in reclaiming all things in one in Christ in preparation for the millennial day. And Gwendolyn, I know that you really spoke to this in your paper, well, both of your papers. But, President Nelson, when he told the women in Spiritual Treasures, right, to like learn about your priesthood, how to draw on your priesthood and draw this
Yeah.
power, but he said there's no manual for this. And so it really seemed like it was incumbent upon us to say, okay, well, what does that look like? How can we flesh this out? And I know that's exactly what you felt inspired to do. That's why you've written these things. So, in what have you fleshed out? Like, what is the priestesshood? What does that look like? What does that encompass in your understanding?
I want to mention something that President Nelson said in addition to what you've quoted, which is I think the reason so many women are speaking up now.
Mm-hmm.
And as you say, we get a lot of pushback, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but I am surprised
Yeah.
because he did ask the women to
Mm-hmm.
speak up and
Mm-hmm.
speak out with our impressions, our insights, and our inspiration. And
Mm-hmm.
I quote that often, like all the time, because people need to be reminded of it. They seem to forget that we actually were asked. And I think that there is a beautiful connection between his invitation and actually it was pleading. It was in a plea to my sisters. So I think there is a direct connection between President Nelson's plea to his sisters and I mean, it's going to be a flood. It's going to be a hail of voices speaking up
Mm-hmm.
about this.
Yeah.
And it's already well on its way. And so also he has 9 daughters, I think. And so if you ask women to speak up and you have 9 daughters, you know what they're going to do. They're going to speak up
They're
and
gonna
they're going to
start
tell you
talking.
their real thoughts. Yeah. So I just, I think it's, I just feel perfectly comfortable giving my honest and sincere impressions. And so the understanding about priesthood that I have, so this would be my perspective, and this, I don't say this to say this is how it is. I say this to say this is how God has shown me in a way that it made sense to me.
Mm,
So if this makes sense to you, then great. I would be happy and love to share it with you. And if it doesn't resonate with you, that is probably why God shared it with me, and God will share a different perspective of priestesshood with you. So with that caveat,
mhm.
the way that I came to see priestesshood was that women and men are fully equal in God's plan.
Hey everyone, thanks for being here. I just wanted to take a second and invite you to check out the links in the show notes and comments below this video to my new book, All Things in One: Reuniting Religion with the Woman in the Wilderness, where we explore questions like, does deep diving into deep doctrine mean going off the deep end and losing my faith, friends, and family? Why does the Book of Mormon mention so few women? Why do members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints believe in a Heavenly Mother yet know so little about her? And what does all this have to do with the Latter-day Zion? All Things in One: Reuniting Religion with the Woman in the Wilderness is a quest for the divine feminine that leads us through the murky terrain of time, folklore, apocryphal texts, and the words of prophets, ancient and modern, to discover how men and women can work together to gather all truth in one in Christ and be reunited with both a mother and a father in heaven. Get yourself or a loved one a copy of All Things in One: Reuniting Religion with the Woman in the Wilderness on Amazon Kindle and Audible.
There is nothing that men have, power, authority, you name it, that God has not given women in equal measure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was sort of led to see that this equality has been balanced, that there has been a balance of powers, a balance of authority given, and that we can see that in the spirit, not verses, but the spirit and the flesh. So as I understand priestesshood, women have authority over the flesh because we are the ones that create the flesh. We become pregnant, our bodies experience that physical change, we give birth, we deliver the baby, we then, the baby bonds with us, and we uh, nurse, breastfeed, so the baby becomes one with us, all these things to give life to a physical body. And men are given that as a pattern for what they are to do as spiritual fathers. So just as we become physical mothers to our children, men become spiritual fathers, or they're invited to become spiritual fathers to the children of God. And so they go through a similar process where, we become pregnant, there's that preparation, and men become teach and change. They teach the people that they're teaching the gospel to. The men change themselves, right? They grow themselves, and the people they're teaching grow. The men then participate in the spiritual deliverance ordinance, which is baptism. They then lay hands on to awaken the Holy Ghost, whereas women have physically touched babies to the extent that we have awakened the light of Christ within them. Men participate in the ordinances of the temple, which I have understood to be a type of attachment, that's something where you learn, you receive a new name, you are washed and anointed, and you also kind of learn the rules and the story around your family. You kind of learn what it's like to be in this house. And for the men, it's teaching what it's like to be in God's house.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the likeness to breastfeeding, where a mother and her baby become one in this natural expression of not just love, but life-giving sustenance is mirrored in the marriage and sealing ordinance. And then that cycle starts again.
Hmm.
So to me, that's how I understand priestesshood, is that the women have authority over the flesh, the men have authority over the spirit. What is so interesting is that men grow to become physically stronger than women.
Hmm.
And so we have been given authority over something that we don't have the full strength of ourselves. And I think that men have a similar situation. They have authority over the spirit, but we know that women are very intuitively spiritual. And so as we see that women need men, we need their strength. Like we really can't do a lot of things without their help. I think that that's a gift to men to learn that they also need the spiritual strength of women, and that as they partner with us in their spiritual realm, right? We have partnered with them in the home and invited them to be our partners in the home. And I think that as they invite us into partnership in the church, that we will be able to establish Zion. That is
Yeah.
the summary of how I understand it.
Yeah. And I think the deeper truth behind how you've interpreted this as there's this balance and flow,
Hmm.
right? There's this give and take. It's very much like a yin yang kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I see it, I flesh out a little differently in my book,
Hmm.
which is totally fine because I feel like,
Hmm.
again, we're all receiving revelation and each one sort of supports the other in its own beautiful way. But this idea,
Hmm.
right, that either way, it's like it's both. It's just both. And yeah, you have
Yeah.
strengths and I have strengths. And that reminds me of something that we kind of chatted about a little earlier. And maybe I'll share my screen here so that we all
Mhm.
can see real quick.
As you're looking that up, I just want to say
Yeah.
it's I think it's really cool that you hadn't read my papers, because I have felt similarly. There's been a few people where I'm like, why have I not read their things yet?
Yeah.
And I felt impressed, like you don't, it's better if you don't read them first. Like you do your work,
Yes.
um, and then you can come together, and then these ideas and impressions can be woven together as appropriate, but we're actually not supposed to like necessarily take from each other so much as bring, each one of us bring what we have been given and then
Yeah.
share.
Right. And I think that's beautiful because, we're all imperfect. We're all filtering things through our own language, our own
Yeah.
understanding and life
Yeah, for
experiences.
sure.
And so when you can have multiple views that are still hitting on the same truths, but are coming at it from different angles, I think you actually come closer and closer to the truth in that way.
Yeah.
So something that this reminded me of that you were talking about with this balance of authorities and things like that. There's a couple places where this has been brought up in the church. So first of all, Elder Ballard in a talk entitled, and are you seeing this on your screen too?
I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So for time and all eternity, right? He talks about this parable that he says, but it's interesting, and I'll show people why here, because Elder or President Eyring totally references how. Well, maybe we should just read it first. Actually, I'm doing a terrible job here. Sorry, but let's actually. Would you mind reading this for the audience, and then we'll discuss it a little bit?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay.
Once a man received as his inheritance two keys. The first key, he was told, would open a vault, which he must protect at all cost. The second key was to a safe within the vault, which contained a priceless treasure. He was to open this safe and freely use the precious things which were stored therein. He was warned that many would seek to rob him of his inheritance. He was promised that if he used the treasure worthily, it would be replenished and never be diminished, not in all eternity. He would be tested. If he used it to benefit others, his own blessings and joy would increase. The man went alone to the vault. His first key opened the door. He tried to unlock the treasure with the other key, but he could not, for there were two locks on the safe. His key alone would not open it. No matter how he tried, he could not open it. He was puzzled. He had been given the keys. He knew the treasure was rightfully his. He had obeyed instructions, but he could not open the safe. In due time, there came a woman into the vault. She too held a key. It was noticeably different from the key he held. Her key fit the other lock. It humbled him to learn that he could not obtain his rightful inheritance without her. They made a covenant that together they would open the treasure, and, as instructed, he would watch over the vault and protect it. She would watch over the treasure. She was not concerned that, as guardian of the vault, he held two keys, for his full purpose was to see that she was safe as she watched over that which was most precious to them both. Together they opened the safe and partook of their inheritance. They rejoiced, for, as promised, it replenished itself.
Awesome. All right. And there's a bit more to that, but what is so interesting about this is if you understand that this is likely a vision that Joseph Smith had. And so what I didn't know until not yeah, fairly recently, I guess, is that the church actually has like a lot of things that aren't always made available to the public, like scholars like Terrell and Fiona Gibbons or people like that. They can go in and they can request, "Hey, I want this. I know it's here, here, here," and so you can go and find these things. Sometimes there are just certain things that aren't, for whatever reason, made available, but it's my understanding that this is one of those, and it's that's really interesting to think about when you then go on to this talk given by Eyring, President Eyring, where it's a Christmas devotional. He talks about the perfect gift, and right in the middle, he just inserts this. It almost seems out of place. Like, why does he talk about this? And he says that he decided to design and build a wooden treasure chest for his wife, and that he got help from other people with their tools and their skills, and did it for weeks, and needed the help of the Holy Ghost in doing this, which is super interesting. And then he says, on the lid, I carved our family monogram. On the front, I placed two panels. On one panel, I carved my initial and my wife's initial on the other. The box can only be unlocked by using two different keys. And now they use this. So I'm like, that's really interesting. Where did he get that from? Was it just from Ballard's talk
Yeah.
or but I think if we understand this within the context of Joseph Smith's actual words to the women, where he's like, I am giving you these keys now. Like, I'm so
Yeah.
excited because this was the order, this is the pattern of the ancient church. And now I finally can do this. And now Emma has these keys. I
Mm.
think this story holds a lot more meaning than we might
That
have
is
thought.
incredible.
Yeah.
When I heard that story the first time, I was like, that's an amazing analogy. And if that's a Joseph Smith uh revelatory vision, that makes so much more sense because it was so profound that I was like, how, wow, that's really something. And I love that so much. Thank you for drawing my attention to that. It's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's kind of I think that's part of the issue. I think that when it comes to the role of women in the gospel plan, generally with priestesshood, it's so darn controversial
Yeah. Yeah.
that there are certain things that are held back or that are just released very quietly. Like, actually, I have something else here that I came across. There's kind of this really popular channel out there. I think it's called The Keystone. And he showed, I was going to pull it up, I
Hmm.
forgot, but there's now on the church website, under this section that's like church and gospel questions, and it says women's service and leadership in the church. I'm gonna have
Hmm.
to, I'm gonna have to pull up my glasses for this one. So, all right. But it specifically says the ways in which women have participated in the church have continued to change since that time. For example,
Hmm.
women sometimes prepared the sacrament table. This is on the church website, okay? And today, and gave blessing, sorry, to heal the sick in the name of Jesus Christ, but without invoking priesthood authority, which is kind of funny because it's like we don't really know because I don't know that we have like absolute
We don't have a
records.
recording.
We
Yeah.
don't. We don't. But see, that's right there on the church website. So it's kind of like we're
Wow.
slowly kind of putting some things out there, but not maybe in such a way that it's going to like really rock the foundation. Oh no, yes, and I need my glasses now. Really rock the foundation of people who aren't ready maybe to consider the role of half the population of the world in the gospel.
You know what's so hard about it is that we're in this I don't know what it is, if it's a time or if it's just this is how it is on earth in mortality,
Mm,
but it's like we're all constantly fighting all the time. And
mm,
w- w- there are so many people currently who are like calling it feminism. Like they get triggered one way or another. Like there are women who say, yes, I'm a feminist. I believe that women are equal.
hmm
And that is triggering for some people to hear. And then there are women who are saying, we think women should be ordained to the priesthood. And then
hmm
that's also trigger like everyone's just getting lumped into the exact same theories. And the side that's it's like I feel like there's just constant battling instead of this desire for oneness of like, well, what are these feminists or women who are not like what are what they actually saying? Like, are they trying to overthrow the church and overthrow the priesthood? Or are they saying, I have something within me that tells me that I am equal to my brothers, and I can see that that's not reflected in the church, and I want to understand more. Or maybe God has given me to understand more because I've been following the invitation of the president of the church,
hmm
right? As you said, the prophet invited us to study the priesthood. And for me, as soon as I started studying it, I was like, oh, I have priesthood. It was just boom,
Yeah,
immediately obvious to me.
yeah.
So obvious. And so I just like, it's just such a fight, but it doesn't have to be a fight. Like we can I don't see reflected in the world yet a loving equality between men and women.
Yeah,
The countries that most closely embrace that are the most safe, secure, and successful countries in the world.
right.
But they also
But
have a problem, some of them, with their birth rate because they don't value women as the nurturing mothers. And I think we have all the ingredients in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints if we would choose to embrace them.
yeah, you talk about that in your paper, actually, the idea that we financially incentivize people to have other people take care of their kids rather,
Yeah.
right, than actually like,
Yeah.
so essentially it's like a tax on stay-at-home moms. If you are a stay-at-home
Yeah.
mom or dad or you, whatever, like you are paying more than somebody who would allow like the state or an institution to raise their children, essentially.
Yeah. I am like kind of, saving money minded, and my dad's a CPA, and so I'm always like, all right, how can we write this off or this or that? And so when we had our first child, I was like, okay, I want to quit. I don't want to have childcare for this baby. I'd like to take care of the baby.
Yeah.
And so we were looking at how that would affect us financially.
hmm
And we found out that if we were to hire someone to take care of him, that would be a tax write-off. We could write off all the costs associated. And I was like, well, you know, how about you just like hire me? I'm telling my husband, let's just hire me because
Yeah. Set up an
I'm worth a
LLC.
lot.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm worth a lot. I've got a master's degree and I know a lot of, I've got like some child development stuff.
hmm
Like I could earn a lot of money doing this. And but they had in the law already accounted for and made sure that there was no way it was airtight. You couldn't do it for your own child or
Yeah.
have anyone in your family do it. You couldn't even like pay your your mom or an aunt to watch over that baby and pay them. It was like, no,
Wow.
only
And
if you hire a stranger.
that is such a perfect example, right, of how we don't actually value the
Yeah,
the role of women and femininity, and by doing so by default then we don't actually value the role of masculinity, not true
yeah,
masculinity, because that is also based in fatherhood. And of course I'm not saying that like you
right.
have to produce children to embrace these roles. I talk about that in the book. There's levels to this, but even at the most fundamental basic level, if we can't acknowledge like the the incredible priesthood godly power that women have, not only to create life but then to nurture that life, to imbue it, like we talk,
Yeah,
like you talk about, with the light of Christ, with things like that, like we're just completely dismissing the entire plan right from the get-go, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There have not been as many studies as I think there should be. But hey, I haven't done it myself, but I think there's a lot to learn between the increase of many of the societal ills. I mean, that's what it says in the proclamation, the family a proclamation to the world, that like as people disregard this, then we will have a huge increase in the prophecies foretold of negative things to come, right? I think we have a lot of societal ills that can be directly connected to children not having their mother in those important years when they're forming their sense of security and identity and their ability to reason and also handle their own emotions. Erica Komisar, who I cite, has done so much work on that, and she has participated in these sorts of studies and has a lot of data about how important it is and how essential it is for children to have their moms in those critical first few years of life. And our public policy does not reflect that.
Yeah. And going back to this idea that you spoke of about this contention, right? Like
Yeah.
what is up with all this contention? Why are we making this so hard? And I think that's one of the reasons why one of President Nelson's other main messages has been getting rid of contention.
Yeah.
He just did it this last conference again, talking about social media and how contentious we still are. And as we talk about these things that are sort of like, okay, these are revelations that are just kind of like you and I are receiving, and it's about these higher things that or other,
Mhm.
deep mysteries like Heavenly Mother that haven't
Mhm.
really been revealed from the pulpit. And people might question, well, why are you talking about these things, or why aren't they revealing it from the pulpit? And it's like, well, because they're still having to tell us to not like go on social media and be mean to people. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you can't you can't. How are we supposed to have general worldwide greater things revealed to us when we still can't be nice to each other? Like we're so
Mhm.
stunted because we're not truly, I feel, embracing just the basics of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
That's
Um,
such a good point. And I do
yeah.
think that also since coming to have this new view of myself as a woman, I've come to see that I'm actually not spiritually lower than any of the authorities in the church,
Right.
that I truly am equal to them and they're my brothers. So I'm not like looking down either, right? Like what I want to do is bring myself into a state of spiritual oneness with them. But not by being a little follower and this obedient little just obedient soldier, right? Like I'm supposed to be in a spiritual oneness with them. And so my personal feeling is that they truly need the revelation that God is giving to us. And so
Yes.
it's so much like how are they going to how are they going to know the revelations that God is giving to the women of the church if we don't say them out loud? Like you don't have to hear it, you don't have to do anything about it, but I will say it because God's given it to me and so I want to share that. And I think it could be useful. I hope it's useful.
Yeah. I know because we've been warned, well, we don't tell them what revelations they should receive per se, in the sense that we don't command
Mm,
them or say you
right.
should be doing this. But at the same time, the history bears out that
Yeah.
right? Like what the members of the church are receiving, how the members are progressing in their understanding totally influences the kind of revelation that does come
Yeah.
from the top down. And also to your point of us being equal. If we actually study the scriptures that President Nelson encouraged the women of the church to study regarding priesthood, he gave us really specific
Mhm.
scriptures, right? He said, read this
Yeah.
and then read this and then read this.
Yeah.
And if you read those, it is very clear that the Melchizedek priesthood is not about an office, right? The
Mm.
Melchizedek priesthood is about receiving these greater mysteries. And I go into this, and you haven't read this part in my book, but I kind of lay it out like this is what a priesthood key is. And
Mm.
clearly,
Oh,
like,
yay.
right? Like it is it and we sometimes conflate keys with offices, and that is not the same thing. It is not.
Mm.
Keys are power and authority that are given to people directly from God. right? And so
Mm,
keys unlock things. So if you have the power and authority to unlock a mystery, to, like it says, to part the veil, which is the purpose of the Melchizedek priesthood. It says to part the veil, to enter the presence of God, right? To receive the greater mysteries. If you have those keys given to you, then you already have that authority from God. And it says that
mm,
all other offices, right, are appendages to that. Meaning
mm.
the role of President Nelson, the role of the apostles, the role of our stake presidents and bishops is to facilitate people being to exercise their Melchizedek priesthood power, their higher priesthood
Wow.
power to receive these greater mysteries.
That is so beautiful. That really resonates with me because I've kind of had this understanding of the temple that the temple itself is not the thing. It's
Mm,
supposed to
yeah.
teach us how to receive the thing ourselves.
Yes.
Like the temple experience is like, here's how, it's like an invitation.
Hmm.
Here's how to ascend. This is the pattern.
Yes.
And so I
Mhm.
love what you just said about the keys, that this is really an unlocking and it's like a pointing the way.
Right. And the idea, and I got this actually from my friend Todd, but
Hmm.
prophets are patterns, right?
Hmm.
So when Joseph Smith is supposed to be as Moses, we're told in the scriptures, it's because
Hmm.
they both ascended the mountain, right? The
Yeah.
proverbial mountain of the Lord, or made that temple ascension journey into the presence of God. And then there to bring that pattern, Joseph Smith was specifically told, I'm going to give you a pattern, right? There to bring that pattern back to the rest of us so we can follow that pattern and do what
Hmm.
they did. That's the whole point, right? Like you quote in your
Hmm.
paper, Moses said that we could all be prophets, right?
Yeah.
The point
Yeah.
is for us all to receive all the keys, all the things, right? That it takes to become like our mother and father in heaven. And so I
And
love,
Moses,
yeah,
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, no, you go. Go ahead.
Well, Moses and God had invited everyone to come up too.
Yeah. Yes.
Like Moses
Hmm.
wasn't the only one. Well, or rather, perhaps it was only the men who were invited. I'm not exactly. They were given strict instructions for how to prepare, and it included washing themselves and various things. And they did not want to. Once they saw how scary it was with the lightnings and everything, they were like, Moses, you go, just go.
Yeah.
Like, just, tell us what he says, tell us what God says. And
Yeah.
I wonder about that for our dispensation. Like,
Hmm.
was everyone invited? And then maybe Joseph went up alone and was like, all right, everybody, here's the pattern. And
Yeah.
we're still trying to get into that promised land through accepting the true pattern. I think that's one potential that I
Yeah.
see.
And now we're going back to chapter one of my book and we're going all the way through because that's totally, but that's the truth. And I think you hit the nail on the head because a big portion of my book is about letting go of fear. And the people were
Yes.
afraid. They were afraid. And that's why they didn't do it. And I'm the language to me there, it says people. It's generally all the Israelites were invited up there.
Mhm.
And
That's
they were
good.
afraid, so they wanted this mediator. Well, you do it for us, right? You be the mediator. And Joseph Smith, even Doctrine and Covenants, he's like, everybody's coming to him. And he's saying, and he shares this revelation that's like, it's not a wise, but a slothful servant that needs to be commanded in all things. You should be developing this relationship with God. You should be
Mhm.
receiving these revelations. But we get afraid, right? Because maybe we have some incorrect ideas about how authority works, right?
Mm,
Because of the patriarchal structures, because of
yeah.
keys and how we misinterpret that because we don't actually study the scriptures and what they say about those things, right? And
Yeah.
so we have this fear that limits us, right? And we become limited individually and we become limited as a church,
Yeah.
right? And then like we started off saying, and then where's Zion? Where is she? Because
Yeah.
she's not here.
Something about what you're mentioning about the fear, that has been, um, I have been really struck by how much fear I see.
Oh yeah.
I used to have a lot because of
Hmm.
polygamy. That was my fear. And so I had a hesitation, not even hesitation. I was just like, oh, I can't. I just can't. Because I knew it's definitely happening. It's definitely part of the Lord's plan and the whole thing.
Hmm.
And when I finally surrender. I mean, that's a very feminine thing to do, is surrender. It's like you just uh you don't have to give birth or be a biological mother to understand these things, but I do think the patterns of motherhood are intended to teach us. So whether you do it yourself or whether you simply have received it, right, through being born, to me, surrender is very feminine because you have to surrender to give birth to a baby. Like you cannot fight it. There's no way around it. Like it's going to be happening. And so when I surrendered my fear about polygamy and I was like, I just like, okay, just, I just need to know,
Hmm.
I just need to know, like I accept. I was just so amazed and healed that this is actually not God's plan for women, period. Like it's just not. And yet God has suffered all sorts of things in
Hmm.
the course, the history of the world. But that has been really beautiful to me to see that my fears have, in fact, not been realized. And I wonder, respectfully, right? I wonder if there's a fear that maybe some of the men have, that they will lose their authority, they'll lose their power, they'll lose their importance
Hmm.
if they look and if they start to see that what the women are coming to know through our own personal revelation is in fact the truth about God. So I
Yeah.
would just say if anyone has any kind of inkling that they have a personal fear of losing their authority, their importance, that you will be just delighted. You'll be delighted by what God shows you, that you're actually not going to have your worst fears confirmed. You are going to be filled with joy when you choose to just lay it down and look in love.
Absolutely. Because really the main fear that is always foisted on us by the adversary, and you
Hmm.
can see this
Hmm.
right in Jesus's ascension up the mount and his engagement with the adversary there and casting him out. It's always a fear of scarcity, of not,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not enough, or there's not enough, or God's not enough. And and what we and it's because we perpetuate these beliefs. Like even like you said, maybe there are some versions of feminine and feminism out there that do promote this idea, well, we have to take from the men or dismiss men in
Hmm.
order to be enough, right? And likewise, men have quite frankly been doing that for millennia, so that's not new. But it's
Yeah.
like, but there is no scarcity. There is no scarcity of priesthood power. There is no
Yeah.
scarcity of importance, of being special. You know what I mean? And I'm
Hmm.
searching for a better word, but there is no scarcity of our eternal value and worth in this plan. It's there's more than enough. And in the bringing together of the masculine and feminine, the male and the female, we will have more, not less.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so
So
beautiful. I love that.
going to your, so let's just do this then, because one of the things that you said that really, I don't know, just drove it home for me is you said that sexual intimacy falls under the authority of the priestesshood. It informs, let me see, I think I read that right. That sexual intimacy
Hmm.
falls under the authority of the priestesshood, informs our understanding of the painful issue of polygamy, as we find Sarah in the first scripturally recorded example of a divinely sanctioned polygamous relationship. Now, as I've studied this and on my own, and then, and it was really just sort of a realization as all these stories all of a sudden just came together for me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, Gwendolyn, yes, this makes so much sense because women are over the ordinances of the flesh, as you've spoken to here, and you flesh out more. And I kind of flesh that out a bit in my book in a different way.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because that is our priestesshood purview. Nobody has the right to tell a woman what to do with her body, right? How
That's
to
right.
engage in sexual intimacy, when to have children,
Yeah.
any of that, right?
Yep.
So, do you want to? I don't know. We could go into some stories with that, but I think if we really, really grasped this, that it does put polygamy, it puts it in context because a woman like Sarah can choose to
Yes.
intercede for her husband. That is her right if she's going to marry a second man. But no man can ever tell a woman what to do. And I think if women
Yeah.
understand this power, that's going to change their whole framework for how they view everything, not just from sexual intimacy and childbearing, but to modesty and, everything, all these things that it's so
Mhm.
much more empowering for women to see it in that way. But anyway, yeah, you can take it from there if you want to talk
Well,
about
I
something.
want to, well, there's something from your book I want to read, but I do want to mention that understanding in that way has been so healing for me because even now when I read I feel like divinely sanctioned polygamists, I'm like, maybe I wouldn't say that now. I would maybe be like,
You never know.
like the Lord suffered it.
Mm-hmm.
And and to me, these things are lower ways. They're not the high way of living. They're the low m mortal, not so good ways, but it's like,
Yeah.
you know what? Sometimes people do that on earth
No, I
and
would
they
say
do
that
it
the
because of their
instances,
culture.
yeah, I would say the instances that you show that we do have, like with Sarah or Rachel and
Yeah.
Leah, are coming still from that scarcity mindset
Oh yeah, and
from
they're
the women.
entirely
Yeah.
based, yeah,
And men. Yeah.
and they're entirely based in their cultural belief of how things are supposed to be. And so I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
that in these cultural beliefs of how things are supposed to be, then you can see that the people who were the least condemned in that were the ones where the women took the lead.
Hmm.
I loved something from your book that I want to read, if you don't mind, that's
Yeah.
tangential to this, but when we think about women having the authority over sexuality, I want to read this because I just think it's beautifully worded. And I apologize if you can hear background noise. I'm so sorry.
I know.
We
It's
have
good.
the missionaries over for dinner tonight, but there are six missionaries, and my children and my husband are all down there together, entertaining and having fun. And I'm happy to have this conversation with you right now. This is like,
That's awesome.
it's like really fun and relaxing for me to do this. So, okay, so here's this quote from your book. How different would our discussions on modesty be if all young women understood that their superpowers, their priestesshood powers, were connected to their bodies, their emotions, and as in the case of Ruth, Esther, and the daughters of the Limhites, their sexuality? If young women understood that modesty is not about covering their bodies because they are shameful or because women are responsible for men's thoughts and emotions, but because with great power comes great responsibility, how differently would they see themselves? They would be empowered to know that if women's intentions and how we dress and behave are coming from a place of love and awareness of the need to inspire and uplift the men around us, then whatever we wear, do, or say would be good, regardless of the behaviors or judgment of others. However, if, however, we are using our physical powers as a manipulation from a place of woundedness and selfishness to control people or place ourselves above others, then that is by definition priestcraft, or in this case, priestesscraft. I loved that so much. I feel like the way that we teach our young women right now has a lot of good, but there's still so many parts where I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, it's
Yeah.
not, it's not about, it's not about the men in that way, right? Like
Yeah.
it's about the men as our brothers who we love, but like also we are allowed to wear clothes. Like, and yes, we do have breasts, and we're not gonna like try to pretend we don't.
Mhm.
So I just thought that was so beautifully said. Sorry to kind of like bring it real, really, really real, really fast, but I thought you worded it so beautifully, and I love that. I want to
No,
teach that to my daughter.
absolutely. No, let's keep it real because my daughter develops terrible scrupulosity.
Mm-hmm.
With just, and I never taught that in my home, but
Mm-hmm.
she picked it up, right?
She
Because
picked
of
it up.
culture. And she couldn't even look at a girl with a midriff. She couldn't even look at a man in without a shirt on. It bothered her so much. Like she would have to like run
Yeah.
away from it. Like that's how bad it was for her.
Yeah.
And so I've literally like forced my daughter to wear a bikini as an exposure
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
I'm like, no, we're not doing this. Like, your body is incredible. Yes, you are a
Mm-hmm.
sexual being. That is a
Mm-hmm.
huge part of your power. And without context, maybe it might not make as much sense, but I go in my whole book, I make this whole case, right, about what is the priestesshood, what is the divine feminine, and it's all in there. And our bodies are literally our superpowers, but it's not
Yeah.
just physical. It's this union of the spiritual and physical, and of course it has, like
Yeah.
you said, just like the temple has its higher meaning. Similarly, everything that has to do with our bodies has a higher spiritual thing that we also
Mm.
have this priestesshood over. Anyway, I know there was a part of that you wanted to like address with women's superpowers being their tears or something, right? In my
Yeah, well, the way you described this actually was really powerful to me because I think that personally, this speaks to how critical it is for each one of us to seek out this inspiration from God for ourselves,
mm,
because each one of us is going to be given a different perspective and way to describe it that's
mm,
going to be so meaningful for our sisters and brothers. And I fully agree with this idea that our bodies are a superpower. And I'm really sad that I, um, I'm trying to think of how to word this like carefully and appropriately, but I know that
mm,
are many women that feel that the emphasis on motherhood in the church
mhm.
shames women who don't have children, who can't have children, or who choose to have fewer than maybe they could possibly have, which is also like, I'm sorry, but women can have so many, like women can have 20 to 30 children. So unless you see a woman having that many, like she probably
She's not having
is
all the
using
ones she
some
could.
form of birth control. Yeah. And
Yeah.
like, I just, there's all these things where I'm like, can we just be okay with that, with women choosing the amount that they feel the
Hmm.
Lord is happy about for them. But I just think that there's so, as long as we as women uh, have disdain for taking care of children and giving birth to children, then we're not going to be able to step into our priestesshood power. We really need to love that we are the ones, that women are the ones that all people have to receive a body from.
Hmm.
Like you cannot get a body unless you get it from a woman. And until we embrace that as our superpower, it's going to be really hard to have a full partnership with men and to establish Zion. And there's all these little pieces to that superpower. It's not just giving birth.
Hmm.
It's it's the whole body, it's the whole physical and all the parts that we haven't even figured out yet. So you mentioned this that's like a long way to get to what I wanted to point out.
Hmm.
But uh oh boy, and I'm not there yet. I
Well,
thought I
and so
had it
while
pulled
you're
up right in
looking,
front of
I
me.
was going to say,
Yeah.
and maybe even disdain isn't quite the word, but I would say coming from a place of woundedness around motherhood,
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
childbearing, I think there's just a lot of pain and woundedness for various reasons. And this need to contend for our rightful place in a man's world that
Hmm.
leads to right the subversion of some of that. And so we, yeah, like you said, so then we don't actually embrace who we are with or
Hmm.
without the birthing of children in this life, because
Yeah.
it is just a part of it, of the whole big picture, right? But if you remove that part, you don't have the whole picture.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so I'm gonna just read the sentence right before that, the prior sentence. So one of the things that is this is me speaking. One of the things that is needed to awaken this partnership between men and women. The first step, now I'm quoting you, the first step, along with the repentance and meditative practices discussed in chapter 3, may be for women privileged with priestesshood and the freedom to act for themselves to embrace their own femininity and the simplicity of the power it holds to heal this wounded world. For instance, according to research, tears collected from women in a heightened state of emotion have been shown to reduce male aggression, like Rapunzel, who heals her husband's blindness with her magical tears, or Cinderella's tears that grow a wishing tree. These original Grimm's fairy tales may be touching on a deeper truth by showing how women's tears literally have superpowers. Perhaps this is why Mary Magdalene shed tears at the tomb of the Savior before he wakes and arises to meet her. I like that really blew my mind because there to me are so many little details in the power of the priestesshood that have not yet been awakened.
Hmm.
There's so much to it. You also talk about in this chapter about the loving intentionality that people directed toward places of conflict
Hmm.
and how that created a statistically significant reduction in violence in those places. And it makes me so excited, right? I'm like so excited for the future and so excited to see how these things actually end up manifesting and changing our reality. But there's so much to learn. I think about in the Bible, we have these examples of people who live for hundreds and hundreds of years, almost a century. And this is something I mention in my paper. It's like we have no idea why. Like we just don't know anything about why they lived that long. And so we should really have an open mind about why was that, what was going on. And I wonder how much an understanding of priestesshood contributed to that. If Eve and her daughters had the fullness of the gospel understanding of how women and men partner together to not just spiritually flourish, but physically. And if that's something that's within our reach, if we can grasp it, I just like it's very exciting to me. And I love that, like even the tears part, I'm like, have I ever tried wiping my tears on my children? No, but I kiss them all the time, right? And I know
Hmm.
like I kiss them and I touch them and I give them a huge amount of physical affection. And I do feel like that has been a great gift to their um, emotional stability and to their intellect and all sorts of things. So I just love that you drew that out.
Thank you. And yeah, and ultimately the point that I make at the end of the book is it's not just about priestesshood, right? And it's not just
Hmm.
about priesthood, but that the divine feminine is about bringing together the masculine aspects of the religion that we've got down. We've got that part down. It's bringing that together with the feminine part of the gospel that we don't fully understand yet. We don't fully understand how to be a bride. We're very much in the
Yeah.
masculine doing. And as we
Yeah.
can learn to embrace and balance it with the feminine, it pertains so much to the superpowers of men,
Mm.
because men also need that higher Melchizedek priesthood. Those, I would say, ascension, doctrine of Christ things that are the purview of the divine feminine, but that doesn't mean they're just on the purview of women. It means
Right.
that we, like you said, we share in these things. At the end of the day, it's a balance and it's a flow. And so if men understand the role of women better, they're going to
Yeah.
understand the role of Heavenly Mother and the divine feminine and the priestesshood better, and they're going to know how to step into their power, but they're not going to be able to do it alone. Just like,
Yeah.
right? Just like that
Yeah.
parable or that vision said, it's like you need to understand this, but there's a reason why God has set up the families and the plan the way that they have, because we are not meant to do this alone. We
No.
need each other.
We need each other not just in the individual and micro level, but the macro.
Hmm.
Right? So you don't have to be married. You don't have to be, um, you don't have to be heterosexual. You don't have to be any of
Yes.
these things to participate in the matrimonial order, which is understanding that this world needs balance.
Yes.
And it's so encompassing. It includes everyone, which I just love. When I read Christ's works and ministry, I'm like, every single person had a place in his kingdom, and that is just so beautiful to me. There's room for everyone in it.
Yeah. And rather than seeing things through a lens of fear, right? Like, I mean,
Hmm. Yeah.
when it comes to people who are LGBTQ, or when it comes to
Hmm.
feminism, or when it comes to all these like triggering things, it's like, can we just see that these are expressions,
Yeah.
perhaps godly designed expressions of saying, hey, we need balance. We are so
Yeah.
imbalanced. We're so extreme. We can't, we can't even figure out what's what. And it's
Yeah.
because I think we have these things kind of put in our face showing us that's because we've been so imbalanced for so long now. We're just going to have things that are so in your face, you cannot ignore this anymore. Either you learn,
Yeah.
right? You learn how to let go of the contention and let go of whatever you think things should be, and just embrace the love and the grace
Hmm.
and the beingness that
Mhm.
comes with the divine feminine worship, and expression of godliness, or
Mhm.
things are just going to kind of burn themselves to the ground at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, it's been one thing I've been intentional about in my worship of the divine feminine is that I've realized that she's not. It's not like I can worship God the Father without worshiping God the Mother.
Hmm.
Like there's no, and I can't worship her without worshiping him. That this
Yeah.
they are one.
Hmm.
This is one united God that's not going to be separated by us.
Yeah.
And so when I'm joyfully worshiping God in that way, that brings a love and a grace into my heart where I'm just like, I'm not worried about how other people are doing it.
Hmm.
I'm just like, okay, let me just get myself right. That's the ideal. I'm not always in it, but
Hmm.
the ideal is like, let me get myself right because God is love and God is a united love. And so I need to be able to be in united love with every person I'm around.
Hmm. That's such a perfect like way of expressing that, Gwendolyn. Like I feel like you can
Mm-hmm.
just tell people like you and others who really have tapped into the divine feminine, who have tapped into their heavenly mother, because it manifests as this Zion mentality. It manifests
Yes.
as working on going inward, doing that feminine work of going inward and aligning my heart and mind with the heart and mind of Christ, who, yeah, as you study, you see is inextricably intertwined with the mother. You can't separate him out from the mother.
You can't.
And so as I align my heart and mind with that heart and mind of Christ, then we become of one heart and one mind with those who are Zion. And we don't feel the need to go out and control people and make them see it our way or, force them to whatever.
Yeah.
But we do invite because that's what the woman does, right? She like with
Mhm.
the powers of sexuality. I mean, really, women are are the gatekeepers, or should
Yeah.
be, right? Because if
Yeah.
they're not, then a man's doing something he shouldn't be. And so,
And frankly, men don't enjoy it as like the best sexuality is with an enthusiastic and happy woman. Like,
yeah.
so anyway, that's just a quick little side note. Like, you're going to have a much better experience if the woman loves it.
Right. And you and I, we heard someone the other day make a case for polygamy because women don't like sex, and which was so funny.
Yes.
And it was just like, well, you and I were coming at it from slightly different perspectives, but I'm like, well,
Yeah.
women don't like it when they're in a relationship that is like there's no trust and there's no,
Yeah.
companionship. But
Yeah.
if a woman feels safe and she's got like total partnership with her husband, I know plenty
Yeah.
of women who are the aggressors in their relationships. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's not the standard across the board. So, yeah,
Yeah.
right?
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, men, if you want a good sex life, like just that's
Let your
that's
wife embrace
yeah,
her femininity and let her embrace her equality with you
her
as a
power, her
spiritual
priestesshood
equal.
power.
Yeah, let her embrace it. Don't
Yeah.
try to like stifle that. Don't try to tell her she's out of line, that
Hmm.
she's getting ahead of anyone. She is allowed to receive revelation for herself
Hmm.
of truth. Like there's no like ceiling on who's allowed to receive truth. Like we can all learn what's true. We're not trying to receive revelation for like who should be doing what in which office of the church,
Yeah.
but we're allowed to learn truth. So I agree. Yeah, you want to be happy in a marriage, which includes all facets,
Hmm.
then don't be afraid and love what you are learning and allow your wife to learn that without any kind of negative feedback from you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where were we going before that? Because now I just
I don't
we
know. I'm sorry.
no, I was going somewhere. And
We were talking about when you get to the Zion mentality,
oh
it
yeah.
does fill you with love and patience for your fellow men, brothers and sisters.
Yeah. And I feel like at the end of the day, that's the message that we keep getting from our leaders.
Yeah.
I, right? It's again, it goes back to this idea of in the Doctrine and Covenants when it says it is our sad experience that when
Yeah.
people get a little authority as they suppose, they start trying to exert it. And so I would just say if you're like feeling inspired to receive greater things, if you're like, well, I want revelation or I want to have this closer relationship with God or whatever it is that you're feeling to pursue, or maybe for me, like me, it's always just been healing. My goal is always healing, healing me, healing my family, helping others to heal. And as you desire that priestesshood power of healing, because that's totally under the purview of the divine feminine is healing, right?
Hmm.
As you pursue that, understand that in receiving these things comes this greater responsibility to let go of control, let go of manipulation on, and let go of the ego on every single level. Because if we don't, that's when you start going down those forbidden paths and you see people going off the deep end with their revelations or with, oftentimes that for some reason it
Hmm.
always seems to lead to polygamy in even in modern
Yeah,
times. People start receiving more, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, polygamy. And it's like, anyway, but
it's curious.
yeah, but I digress. Well, Gwendolyn, this has just been super fun, and yes, it was a very feminine conversation all over the place. But was there anything that we didn't talk about that you were hoping to, get out there today?
No, I loved this conversation so much. Thank you, Jocelyn, for letting us just go wherever we wanted to flow. I just have like I I just have so much like hope that individually people are waking up or awakening or however we want to say it, we are awakening to this potential. And as soon as you see this little glimmer, um, it's very hard to stop searching for more and more and more as long as you decide to go in love. If you keep holding on to the fear, it's going to be hard to move forward. But I just have so much encouragement for anyone who has this little glimmer of hope of like, huh, maybe I can learn something that's beyond what's been expressed by the church leaders, not to get ahead of them, but because I personally want to know God. The
Yes.
invitation has always been there for us to come to know God for ourselves personally. And I just hope that every person who has a desire for that decides that they can do that and seeks out to know God for themselves. Um, However, God chooses to reveal that
Yes.
there's many ways of understanding God, and I definitely have come to know that the highest of all is love. So if we seek through
Hmm.
love and if we choose to treat each other with love, then we cannot be held back from God.
It is absolutely about love. And God is never going to withhold love. And God's never
Mm-mm.
going to hold you back from love simply
Mm.
because of your status within
Right.
your religion or your family or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, beautiful. Perfect, Gwendolyn. Thank you so much for ending us on the
Thank
message of
you.
love today. Appreciate it.